Hello and welcome to another Elko County School District Board meeting recap with me, CJ Anderson. I am the superintendent of the Elko County School District, and thanks for joining to follow along. As always, we'll start here at our ecsdnv.net page, hover over About Us, click over on Board of Trustees, and then from here you just scroll down and click on Board Docs, and that takes you directly to where you need to be to find all the information from our board meeting. So we'll click here on the November 7th agenda, open the agenda there, and we'll go through the agenda here on the left-hand side. So we started out in our normal fashion. We were able to introduce our student board member, Danielle McKelly. I should have said this board meeting took place out in Carlin at Carlin Combined School, and Danielle McKelly is a wonderful senior who attends out there in Carlin, and so we were able to hear about the great things she's accomplished over her high school career and her plans for the future, and appreciated her presence and voice at our meeting. We also got to have a great presentation from the Carlin Robotics Club. There's a PowerPoint attached here that you can open to see what they presented to us, but it was great to hear from Carlin, always with a strong robotics and computer science program. Wonderful school from that standpoint. We then had another presentation. This one was from one of our school district employees. She's a teacher, is taught in various places throughout our district. Her name's Corey Ward. But aside from being one of our teachers, she's also an advocate for students with severe needs from across the state, and she's part of a statewide committee to further awareness and support for students and families in their transition from receiving supports in schools to when they become adults, and how we can continue to prepare them for that and show support as a school district for that. And that is something called the Olmsted Plan. And Ms. Ward also had a PowerPoint that explained all of what the Olmsted Plan seeks to do, and kind of goes into a little more detail than my quick recap I just had. And then now we go into our business items from the meeting. The first three are all very similar. According to our policy, graduation dates will take place on the last day of instruction prior to this school year, with some schools being on 4-day and some schools being on 5-day models. We had graduations on Fridays and we had graduations on Thursdays. However, with all schools now being on a 4-day model, that means everybody's last day of school this year will be a Thursday. And therefore, there was a kind of a request from the Board of Trustees and from me to administrators to potentially consider holding their graduation, some of them holding a graduation on a day other than Thursday. So we had 3 schools make a request to do that. They were Spring Creek High School, Elko High School, and Owyhee High School. Spring Creek proposed a Wednesday, June 5th graduation date, and Elko High School and Owyhee High School proposed a Friday, June 7th date. The Spring Creek request was tabled. No decision was made at that time because they wanted to get a little more information about public input and sentiment on that date. So that has gone back to administration of Spring Creek High to determine how they'll proceed from there, and whether or not they will request again to move that to Wednesday. Or whatever course of action they want to take with that. But that could be potentially on the next agenda or a future agenda. The other 2 for Elko High School and Owyhee High School were both approved and moved forward. So that is what happened with those first 3. 2.04 was to create a special revenue fund for Senate Bill 231 salary increases. Just a quick recap of what that is. During this last legislative session, there was a Senate bill called SB 231, and that allocated $250 million for school districts all across the state to allocate for more salary increase for their for most of their staff, but for very specific categories of staff. But it ends up being most of our staff. So what we did as we finished our negotiations with our bargaining units was once that was all completed, and we anticipated that might be completed at the end of this meeting, we wanted to get ahead of the next steps for SB 231 in order to be able to receive that money. So from a financial auditing and processing standpoint, we thought there might be a possibility that we would need a special revenue fund in order to be able to receive those funds. If you're following me, and so we just went ahead and did this to try to be proactive for that next step. And that was approved, and that fund will be created as we continue down the process of applying for those funds from SB 231. The next item, 2.05, was seeking approval to hire Musgrove Engineering to design and give a cost estimate for the Carlin Combined fire alarm upgrade project. So Carlin Combined has a roughly 30-year-old fire alarm system, which is now outdated. We're no longer able to get parts for it, and we fully intend on having that be part of our capital improvement projects for the next school year. And so we're trying to get ahead of the curve on that, get the design firm hired, get the cost estimates figured out, get that all approved. That way, when we go into the summer, we can get working on that project immediately and not disrupt the school year, and just get that done during the summer. So again, just trying to be proactive and be ready to go for that project. The next one, 2.06, is an item that we've seen a lot of different times, and it was back on the agenda today. Yesterday. It was back on the agenda, and it was about the Spring Creek High School food science building project. And we're still trying to decide what to do with that, and wanted to bring a kind of a more precise breakdown of the cost of each of those elements of the project, because the bids for finishing the project came in quite a bit higher than we originally planned. So it was requested at our last meeting to bring this again with a further breakdown and potentially for action to go rebid, or really there could have been a lot of different directions we had with that. So we brought it here, as you can see in this area in the body of the agenda item. There's a much more complete cost breakdown, and then we had more thorough documents on the last meeting attached to this item as well. In the end, the action that was taken here was to table this project for the time being, and the two primary purposes being that because of the elevated costs, it didn't quite fit the desire to go forward at this time. However, there are potential for additional funding sources to come in. One of those funding sources we're still kind of waiting to find out about is how the county commission will allocate capital improvement funding towards the Elko County School District, and they're still in the process of making that decision and putting that committee together. And so that could potentially impact our future funding. And then there's also opportunity for competitive CTE funding out there in the state, and our CTE coordinator, Heather Steele, will work with our grants coordinator, Cassie Stalkey, on potentially trying to find those funds, and that could impact our ability to do the project in the future. So for now, that item has been tabled, and we anticipate finding out sometime in February, maybe, if we've received any of those competitive funds that I referenced just a moment ago. So that one is on the table for now. The last item under business, 2.07, was a revision to policy GBB 11 titled Conflicts of Interest. And this came about, it's quite a substantial revision. If you click on the attachment that says red line, everything listed in blue is change or addition. And so as you can see, the writing that's in black, that's what existed before, and now the vast majority is new addition. The reason I wanted to show all that to you is just so you see the scope of what has been added. This came about because within the last year or so, we had an audit done of our special services department and operations, and one of the recommendations at the conclusion of that audit was to have a more robust and more descriptive conflict of interest policy. And so through collaboration with our special services department leadership, as well as our legal counsel, we developed this revision, proposed revision to policy GBB 11. As this is the first reading of these new revisions, no action was taken. It was a non-action item. It was for board member review, input, etc. And we will expect to see this item back on at the next school board meeting on November 21st. The consent agenda was approved. It's kind of some standard items on here with the minutes, as well as our yearly, or at least this year's, work-based learning application, and then our annual restorative discipline plan was on there as well for submission to the state. We heard some reports from both our NASB director, Jeff Durham, as well as some items from board members. And then it was my turn for a superintendent's report, and I was able to share on some items and of interest that I'd participated in, that I had gone to, and just great things happening around the district. After our superintendent's report and the review of the accounts payable, we then had a closed session. So a closed session, again, is where the board receives information relevant to the topic of the closed session and potentially takes action. So this particular closed session was regarding the contracts from the negotiation units. So that is our Elko Classroom Teachers Association, as well as our Elko County Support Staff Organization. We came to some agreements with them, and we proposed those agreements to the board. A lot of discussion was had there. The content of the discussion is not publicly available, but the kind of the determination, if there is any action, was given at the end of that. And when we came back into open session, the board moved to approve the new contracts for both of those collective bargaining units. And so we now have new master agreements for both ECTA and EXO, which is, again, our classroom teachers and support staff organizations. So those that was done, and then that was the adjournment of the meeting. One other thing I do want to share, as long as I'm talking about our board meeting, and something that I shared in my superintendent's report, is the implementation now of our partnership with the Cook Center for Human Connection and parentguidance.org. I'm going to click over to this tab again, and from our main page, ecsdnv.net, the very first banner you see is highlighting a webinar coming up, and then it also shows these online parent courses. So under parents or students, you can find a page called ECSD Mental Health Resources, and you can also see that right up here at the top of the page. If you click on that, it brings you to this page solely dedicated to this new partnership. And I just want to remind people that so this will redirect you to parentguidance.org, and on parentguidance.org, you will find on-demand courses, and this is for parents and for students, courses that vary very much in content and what they can do to help you as a parent have support and learn about various stages of child development and how some of the things our students are experiencing and going through, and how we can help them. So those are free courses. We also have something available which comes at quite a cost if you do it on your own, but we have paid for it through our school district with at-risk funds. And these parent coaching opportunities are one-on-one, and you can have these opportunities in both English and Spanish. And this is for you as a parent to be able to talk directly to a licensed professional to help you navigate difficulties you're having with parenting or issues your student is experiencing, and maybe you just don't feel totally equipped to navigate all that all by yourself. And you don't have to do it by yourself. You have help. So that's what the purpose of parent coaching is, and that is free, it is confidential, and it is a service we provide to our community, and we want to make sure people know about that. The last thing to highlight that comes in conjunction with this is our mental health series, which is going to be a series of 10 webinars on 5 different dates. It's 5 different dates, and it's English one, Spanish in the other. That's why it's 10. Um, but we have our first date set, and it is on Tuesday, November 28th. That'll be the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. And the topic of this webinar is social media protecting your child by staying aware and involved. And again, that's offered in both English and Spanish. And there are registration links for those webinars, and that is another free webinar that is being shared with our community, and want to make sure parents and students alike, and community members, anybody, if you reside in Elko County and you're listening to this and you go to our website and utilize these links, you will have access to these resources. So want to make sure you have that, and please spread the word about those resources that we have available. So thank you for hanging in there for one more little plug. And thanks to our partners who are helping make all of these wonderful resources possible. And that is it for today's recap. Thank you for listening, being involved, and we'll catch you with the next recap.